Welcome to Urine Good Hands, the podcast where we dive into everything urology, leading-edge treatments, education on a variety of topics, and expert insights to keep you informed and healthy. Brought to you by the Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia, where innovation meets compassionate care. Because when it comes to your health, you're always in good hands. As always, the information discussed today is purely informative and does not constitute medical advice. All right, ready to jump into bladder cancer.
Let's do it.
We're getting some awesome info today from Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia. We really want to equip you guys with the knowledge to understand the basics and take charge of your health ready.
You got it. And knowing about early detection is key. It can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't realize how common bladder cancer is in the U.S. It's actually one of the most common cancers out there.
Yeah, it's up there. That's why it's super important to know the warning signs. And the good news, if you catch it early, bladder cancer can be very treatable.
Okay, so let's talk symptoms. What's the biggest red flag people should be watching out for?
Hands down, it's blood in your urine, what doctors call hematuria.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a sign you don't want to ignore.
Right. Even if it just happens once, it's worth getting checked out. Doesn't necessarily mean it's cancer, but you want to be sure.
For sure. Are there any other symptoms that might point to bladder cancer?
Definitely. You might notice changes in how often you pee, like needing to go more frequently or feeling like you got to go all of a sudden. Sometimes there's pain or burning when you pee too, and some folks get discomfort in their lower back or pelvis. But honestly, blood in the urine is the one you really don't want to mess around with.
Okay, so red flag number one, blood in the urine. Got it. So who's most at risk for developing this?
Well, the biggest risk factor is smoking. No question about it.
Not surprising, I guess. Smoking always seems to be on the list, right?
It's a big one here, though. We're not talking about a tiny bump in risk either. Smokers are actually 3 times more likely to get bladder cancer than non-smokers.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a serious risk. Other than smoking, exposure to certain industrial chemicals can also increase your chances. And like many cancers, your risk goes up as you age. Most cases are diagnosed in people over 55.
All right, makes sense. So let's say someone has some of these symptoms or they know they have a risk factor. What's the next step? How do you get diagnosed?
Usually you'll start with a urinalysis.
Oh, so pretty basic.
Yeah, simple and painless. It checks your urine for blood or other things that shouldn't be there. But to really get a definitive diagnosis, you'll need something more.
I was going to say, that seems pretty basic.
Yeah.
So what else is there?
The gold standard for diagnosing bladder cancer is a cystoscopy.
Cystoscopy, yeah. Remind me what that is again?
Sure. Basically, it's a procedure where the doctor uses a thin tube with a tiny camera to look inside your bladder.
Oh, right.
It lets them actually see the lining of the bladder and check for anything suspicious.
And if they see something that doesn't look right?
They'll take a small tissue sample, what they call a biopsy, and look at it under a microscope to confirm whether or not it's cancer.
Got it. So what if someone does get a bladder cancer diagnosis? What are the treatment options?
Well, the treatment depends on a few things. For early-stage bladder cancer, surgery is usually the first step.
So if it's caught early, surgery is the go-to.
Often, yeah. One common procedure for smaller tumors is called a TURBT.
TURBT, what's that stand for?
It stands for transurethral resection of bladder tumor. It's minimally invasive, so that's good. They remove the tumor through the urethra, so no big incisions needed.
That doesn't sound as bad as I imagined surgery would be. What about for more advanced cases?
For larger or more invasive tumors, they might need to do a radical cystectomy. That means removing the whole bladder.
Wow, that's major surgery.
Yeah, it's a big one. But sometimes it's necessary to get all the cancerous cells.
I see. Makes you realize why early detection is so important.
Absolutely. It can often mean less invasive treatments and better outcomes overall.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, so we talked about surgery, but are there any other treatment options besides surgery?
Yes, there are. Even after surgery, there are things they can do to try and prevent the cancer from coming back or to manage it if it does. One approach is called intravesical therapy.
Intravesical therapy, that sounds kind of interesting. What is that exactly?
So basically with intravesical therapy, they put medication directly into the bladder. One type is called BCG therapy.
BCG? What does that do?
It uses a weakened form of bacteria to stimulate the immune system, kind of like a little kick in the pants to help your body fight off any remaining cancer cells.
Interesting. So it's sort of like giving your bladder its own little army.
Exactly. And then for more advanced cases, there's also chemo, immunotherapy, and radiation therapy. Those can target cancer cells throughout the body.
So it sounds like there are quite a few different weapons in the arsenal.
Yeah, definitely. It really just depends on the individual and how advanced their cancer is.
Right. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about life after treatment. What are some of the potential side effects people might experience?
Good question. Treatment for bladder cancer can come with some side effects, so it's important to be aware of them. Some common ones are changes in urination, like needing to go more often or even having accidents.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty challenging to deal with.
It definitely can be. And unfortunately, there can be some sexual side effects too, like erectile dysfunction in men or vaginal dryness in women.
Right. Those are tough topics to talk about.
Yeah, they can be. But it's super important to have open and honest conversations with your doctor if you have any concerns at all.
For sure. I bet fatigue is another common side effect, especially with chemo and radiation.
You're right, fatigue is definitely a big one. And it's not just physical fatigue either. It can be emotional and mental too.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a lot to go through. So, what kind of support is out there for people coping with the side effects and just the whole experience of having bladder cancer?
Well, I think having a strong support system is really important. Having family and friends to lean on can make a huge difference. And there are support groups, both in person and online, where you can connect with people who truly understand what you're going through. And don't be afraid to talk to a therapist if you need to.
It's so important to remember you don't have to go through this alone.
Exactly. And from a medical standpoint, ongoing monitoring is super important. Regular checkups, cystoscopies, and urine tests are really important to catch any recurrence early.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about prevention. What can people do to lower their risk of getting bladder cancer in the first place?
I bet you can guess the first one.
Oh, let me guess. Quit smoking.
You got it. Seriously, if you smoke, quit. It's the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. But other than kicking the habit, are there other things people can do to be proactive?
Definitely. Staying hydrated is a big one. Drinking plenty of water helps flush out your bladder, which can help prevent harmful things from building up.
Right, so water is good. Makes sense. Anything else?
Well, the usual advice still applies. Eat a healthy diet with lots of fruits and veggies. Those antioxidants can help protect your cells. And if you work with chemicals, be sure to wear protective gear to minimize your exposure.
Good point. Being aware of your surroundings and taking precautions is definitely smart. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground on bladder cancer. Symptoms, risk factors, diagnosis, treatment, and even prevention. Anything else you want to highlight before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive?
Well, I think we hit the main points, but I can't stress enough how important early detection is. If you see any blood in your urine, don't wait to see a doctor. It could be nothing, but it could also be something serious. Better to be safe than sorry.
I agree. Early detection is key. And if you guys are looking for more information or support, Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia is an amazing resource.
Definitely. They're dedicated to providing excellent care and helping people stay informed about their urological health.
Well said. And with that, we're going to wrap up part 1 of this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Make sure to tune in for part 2, where we'll dig a little deeper into some of the more nuanced aspects of bladder cancer and explore what's on the horizon for treatment and research. See you then.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
One thing we don't always talk about enough is the impact bladder cancer can have on mental health.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's easy to focus on the physical stuff, but the emotional toll is huge, right?
Absolutely. Getting a cancer diagnosis, especially one that affects such a personal part of your body, it can really mess with you.
Yeah.
It can impact how you see yourself, your relationships, your whole sense of who you are.
And I imagine there's a lot of fear and anxiety about the future, too.
Definitely. That's why it's so important to have a good support system. Family, friends, support groups, maybe even a therapist. Having people you can talk to and lean on can make a world of difference.
Right. It's a good reminder that healing isn't just about the physical stuff. It's about taking care of your emotional and mental well-being, too.
Exactly. And speaking of the future, there's actually some really promising research happening right now in bladder cancer treatment.
Oh, really? That's good to hear. What are some of the exciting areas they're looking into?
Well, immunotherapy is showing a lot of promise. It's a type of treatment that harnesses your body's own immune system to fight the cancer cells.
So it's like using your body's natural defenses to target the cancer. That's pretty cool.
Right. And there are also some interesting advancements happening in targeted therapies which focus on attacking specific vulnerabilities in cancer cells.
That sounds super interesting. So it seems like we're moving towards more personalized and precise treatments.
That's the goal. And I think in the coming years, we're going to see even more targeted and effective treatments for bladder cancer, hopefully with fewer side effects, too.
That's great news for people facing this diagnosis. Gives them hope for the future.
It definitely does. And something I always emphasize is that knowledge is power when it comes to your health. The more you know about bladder cancer, the better prepared you are to make informed decisions about your care.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about being proactive and taking an active role in your own health journey, right?
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to go through this alone. There are organizations out there, like Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia, that are dedicated to supporting patients and their families every step of the way.
Right. They're a great resource. So if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed, reaching out to them is a good place to start.
For sure. And as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I keep coming back to the fact that early detection really is our best defense against bladder cancer.
I agree. It's worth repeating. If you see any blood in your urine, don't wait. Talk to your doctor. It can save your life.
Absolutely. And I think another important takeaway from this deep dive is that even after a bladder cancer diagnosis, there's still hope.
Yeah, for sure. There are treatments available, there are support systems in place, and there's ongoing research offering new possibilities. It might not be an easy road, but you don't have to walk it alone.
Well said. All right, I think that wraps up this part of our deep dive into bladder cancer.
Great. We'll be back with part 3, where we'll hear some real-life stories from people who face this diagnosis head-on. Stories of resilience and hope. Don't miss it. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into bladder cancer. We've been talking about all the technical stuff, but sometimes hearing real stories, from people who've actually been through it,
Yeah.
it just hits different.
Oh, absolutely. Stories have this amazing way of connecting with us on a deeper level, It helps us understand the real human impact of something like a cancer diagnosis.
Totally. So for this last part, we want to share a couple of stories about people who faced the challenges of bladder cancer. Real stories, real people.
I love that. Stories of resilience, they show us the strength of the human spirit and how powerful hope can be, even when things are tough.
Right. And that's a reminder that everyone's experience with cancer is different,
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all story.
Exactly. So this first story is about a woman named Sarah. She was in her late 60s. She got diagnosed with bladder cancer after having some urinary symptoms that just wouldn't go away.
So she was smart and got those symptoms checked out.
Yeah, she did. And thankfully, because she caught it early, they were able to do a TURBT procedure to remove the tumor.
That's great news. So how's she doing now?
Well, she's been cancer-free for a few years now, but it hasn't been easy. She had to adjust to some changes in her urination and deal with fatigue, but she's stayed positive through it all. She's determined to live her life to the fullest.
That's so inspiring. She's like a real-life example of resilience.
Totally. She joined a support group, started connecting with other people who get it, and she even started volunteering at a cancer center to help people who are newly diagnosed.
Wow, that's incredible. She took her experience and turned it into something positive to help others.
She did. And her story just shows how important it is to have a community, people to support you during a cancer journey.
Totally. That support system can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for another story?
You bet. So this one is about a man named John. He was diagnosed with bladder cancer in his early 70s, but his was more advanced. It had spread beyond the bladder.
Oh, wow, that sounds a lot more serious.
Yeah, it was. John had to have a radical cystectomy, which is a big surgery.
I can't even imagine. How did he handle that?
Well, John's story is really about the power of the human spirit. He faced his treatment head on, with so much courage and determination. He leaned on his family a lot, listened to his doctors, and he found comfort in his faith.
Sounds like he really used all his resources to get through it.
He did. And even though he had some tough side effects and moments of doubt, he never gave up hope. He focused on the things he could control, like eating healthy, staying active, and keeping a positive attitude.
It's amazing how people can find that strength even when things are really dark.
It really is. John's story also shows how important it is to be open with your doctors. They're there to answer your questions and guide you through every step. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Absolutely. That trust and communication with your medical team is crucial.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that even though bladder cancer is serious, It's not a death sentence. There are treatments out there that work, and people are living long, fulfilling lives after being diagnosed.
That's such an important message, and I think these stories really highlight that. Even amidst the challenges, there's always hope, there's resilience, and there can even be moments of joy.
Beautifully said. And just one more reminder, as we've said throughout this whole deep dive, early detection is everything. So if you notice anything off with your urination, anything at all, talk to your doctor right away. It can make all the difference.
I couldn't agree more. Early detection is key. And hey, if you're looking for more info or support, remember, organizations like Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia are there for you. They're amazing resources.
They really are dedicated to providing excellent care and helping people take control of their health.
Well said. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up our deep dive on bladder cancer. We hope this has been helpful, informative, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, knowledge is power, early detection is key, and hope is always out there. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
If you happen to be in Georgia, you can always check out Advanced Urology Institute of Georgia. They've got 10 convenient locations throughout Metro Atlanta. You can make an appointment by calling 678-344-8900 or go online to www.advancedurology.com.
Great advice.